Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. It is the aftermath, and it's the aftermath of a 10-6 loss for the Patriots in Germany on what feels like what will end up being a landmark day for this team, a feeling of resignation as to what's going to happen after the season and what is happening now in 2023. Agree, or am I being a little too over the top? Recency bias.
No, I don't think you're being too over the top. I agree with you. The sense of resignation that I heard from the podium, specifically from Bill Belichick and others after the game, was just unusual, not alarming, because I think there have been people in the organization, Tom, who have been resigned to their fate for some time now. But to hear it after an ugly game on an international stage, you're the only show in town, you score 6 points, you have to bench your quarterback, you can't do anything right offensively, and your owner is embarrassed in the box. That, to me, is, given the way the season has gone, I felt as though this game represented a new low for them.
Yeah, and we talk so often about rock bottom games and nadirs, and we have often done so after games which were aberrations. This is a continuation, unfortunately, and it is a nadir because as bad as Mac Jones was against Dallas or New Orleans, those seem like temporary things. This looked like a broken Mac Jones today, throwing a fall-away pick with an opportunity to go ahead on a first down play when all he had to do was miss long or throw it completely to a completely open player. You're not going to see somebody that open. Maybe that's why he got so fuzzy on the play. But here's Bill Belichick about the benching afterwards, and you'll also hear Mac Jones speaking about the decision to bench him late in the game and give the final drive to Bailey Zappi.
Bill, what made Bailey Zappi the best option at quarterback for them?
Yeah, I just thought it was time for a change.
Mike Reese, front row far right. Bill, was any of that related to injury?
Yeah, look, I made the decision. That's what it was. We'll deal with next week.
Second row.
Bill, do you still have faith with Mac Jones as your quarterback?
I have faith in all our players.
Yeah, they just told me I was out of the game, so I wasn't playing very good, so I got taken out of the game before the 2-minute drive at the end of the game. So, yeah, that's kind of what it was. It's hard, right? It's a difficult situation, but at the end of the day, I really did want the team to win. I'll always be that person. And I know that, we didn't win, so it's hard for everybody, but I have to play better to not even be in that situation. And, it's not ideal for anybody, right? No one is going to do good in that situation.
And Phil, before we discuss what we have watched and what happens next, it's important to just revisit 17 months ago, Bill Belichick, July 29th, 2022, talking about Mac Jones after he finished as the AFC Offensive Rookie of the Year runner-up, actually NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year runner-up, having had the pole position and lead position in that competition all year over Jamar Chase. Things were looking up, at least at the quarterback position, when Bill sat down at the start of last year's training camp. Here's Bill.
As you install a, quote, streamlined offense, how much input does Mac Jones have on what this new offense will look like as you build it and rep it around him?
Yeah, well, certainly he'll have input. I think Mac's done a great job. He's worked extremely hard. He's got a tremendous work ethic, and in all areas, I think there's a dramatic improvement.
And our producer extraordinaire, Adam Jay-Z, just pointed out that was the 26th, okay, not the 29th. So you people who had the torches and pitchforks ready, you can put them away. How did it get to this point, Phil? And in the end, does it really matter to look for the black box on this particular day?
It doesn't anymore. I feel like we've been looking for it forever. Really since the start of last season. And you look at all the mistakes that you're seeing from the quarterback position from the start of last season, and we're wondering, what's the genesis of it all? And Mac Jones got a massive show of support, I felt, last year from fans and others, because folks understood what an odd situation it was that he had been put in with the coaches that were surrounding him in his second season, a critical season. I think this year, Tom, it has become apparent that it doesn't matter if it's the chicken or the egg. You just can't have a quarterback who's performing this way. So whether it's the coaches who broke him, whether it's the situation that broke him, rough offensive line, pieces in and out, the threat of contact, very real on a very frequent basis, especially early this year, really starting in training camp. If that's what has damaged him, at this point, it does not matter. He's playing like someone you simply can't trust to play that position at this stage.
Yeah, he is broken, and that will most likely mean the end of Mac Jones. Certainly he has no future past the end of his rookie contract. You have to wonder if he has a future past the end of this season here in New England, or whether he's merely a placeholder. And I've said it before, Mac's going to be a hard guy to blow out of that position if you bring him back for training camp as the backup, because he is accurate. He is pretty smart. 5 months time, he'll come back. He'll look good in a practice setting is my guess. Generally good. But what would you say is the next move at quarterback in the short term and then a little bit longer term?
I think number one is you got to allow him to step away. So I do think you have to make that move. I would not make it to Bailey Zappi. I would lean towards Will Grier. But you have to see what it looks like, I think, at least for a little bit of time before making that call for sure that he's going to play. Will Grier is, and he's going to be your starter the next time you see the New York Giants, next time you play a real game. But you have time. You have the bye week. And so that's when I would make that assessment. And if he looks like a disaster and Zappi is a disaster, I don't know, Tom, maybe it turns into one of these things where, and I think coaches, maybe not Bill Belichick, maybe not Bill O'Brien, but I think there are coaches on the staff who have been open to a during the week true quarterback competition.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't, what I've been told is it hasn't really played out that way. You've heard dribs and drabs over the course of the season. Hey, Bailey Zappi and Will Grier have gotten more snaps this week in practice, and let's see how the Patriots decide. What I've heard is that it really has continued to be Mac Jones's job throughout. But I think there are coaches who would be open to it if you said, listen, we're going to split them evenly, and whoever plays the best, you get the job. And even if that leads to not enough reps or not enough practice time to get ready for a game, you shrug your shoulders and say, I mean, could it be much worse right now? And I think that might be the way to go if you don't know for sure that Grier could do it. And I don't really know how you could know for sure if Grier could do it, Tom, because he hasn't been getting reps.
Right. And the interesting thing with Will Grier, he doesn't have a plus arm either. Might be a little more fast, but he's also a 6'2", low 200s quarterback with good leadership skills and a somewhat suspect arm. From what the scouting reports, believe me, I have not gone deep on Will Grier. Bailey Zappi is not a good enough player to elevate and say, go ahead, take over. And that again is a failing by Bill Belichick and the personnel department, but the personnel department just nods, as far as I'm concerned, to whatever Bill wants. But you have nobody on the roster with a plus arm. And what I would imagine we're going to see is a lot of 28 carry games, and the Patriots try to keep it under 20 for attempts. Phil, I saw you were itching.
Might even be more than that. I mean, they were at, I believe it was 36 today. That's with 3 Mac Jones runs mixed in, maybe a couple sneaks and 1 scramble mixed in for Mac Jones. But yeah, I think that's how you have to play it. So yeah, I like the idea of, okay, Zappi Grier quarterback competition during the bye and into that Giants week, and whoever wins, you get to play. Although I personally have seen enough of Bailey Zappi.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I would be willing to go to Will Grier like starting now. But I guess if he's continued to be the number 2 and you'd like to see him get a few more reps, then maybe that's what you would do if you're Bill Belichick. Just have them duke it out the next couple weeks.
They have a runway, don't they? Because it's not like the Giants are going to walk in, God forbid, and score 35 with Tommy DeVito. I mean, Tommy DeVito against Will Grier or Bailey Zappi. Bury the under. But they have a runway.
Boy, what an ugly. And then you asked long-term, what do you do? You start scouting these quarterbacks in college really, really hard. You start thinking about your future with potentially Baker Mayfield or Ryan Tannehill. Maybe you start thinking about, should we be willing to spend money on Kirk Cousins if he shakes free? I just look at all these guys, throw Jacoby Brissett in the mix too. None of these guys are really mobile enough for me, Tom. I just think it's so important now to have athleticism at that quarterback spot, even if you're not building an offense around the guy, to be able to scramble a little bit and freelance a little bit more than what they've had. I think would go a long way in helping out this offense that needs all the help it can get. You're leaving too much meat on the bone by not having a mobile guy in that position in this game.
Gardner Minshew, a Gardner Minshew type, should be the backup right now in New England. That's what I was talking about in the offseason when it came clear to me that Bailey Zappi wasn't good enough to be the backup. It was a Gardner Minshew type that the Patriots needed to bring in. And you saw Minshew today, the better quarterback of the two, with an ability to create a little bit with his feet and have an arm that is a tick or two, not several, a tick or two better than Max. So if you're going to be a team that can't pass protect, they certainly can run block. We saw that today. But if you can't pass protect, you need somebody to be able to run around and throw on the run. I mean, the protection was atrocious today, but I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that. I do want to get into the black box of Mac's second half disintegration. They get a pick. They're going down the field. They say, okay, we can't throw because we can't protect. Let's just keep running. They keep running. They get down and they have a 3rd and 5. Excuse me, a 3rd and 2. It was a 3rd and 2. I correct myself. And they went to shotgun. And they had a low crosser for Demario Douglas. And the timing seemed perfect. Mac's back foot hit. Demario Douglas hadn't yet reached the linebacker. And Mac didn't throw it. I don't know if he thought, if I throw it to him there, he's going to get demolished. I'm going to wait. And then there was heat on him, and he was waiting for the window, him to get into the next window. But it ended up being protection breakdown. And then the flip, which could have, would have, should have been picked off if it was even worse somehow, to Ramondre Stevenson. And then came the earful from Bill O'Brien. So that Mac got. And then after that, how did the drives go after that, Phil?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Do you know that pass, believe it or not, was the first pass he threw of that drive? So his first pass of the second half. They went, and this is just me eyeballing it, but they went inside run, inside run, inside run. Looked like sort of a wide zone, and then draw from under center. Then they get to 3rd and 2, and everything blows up. I mean,
they missed the field goal, so we're remaining 7-3.
To your point, I'll tell you how the other drives played out here. You had the Patriots have a long drive that ended in a field goal, but it ended before the field goal with a incompletion to Hunter Henry that was very nearly picked off. So you almost throw an interception in the back of the end zone, leads to a field goal.
It seemed like that seemed like it was a day and a half later after the Demario Douglas miss. It's like there has to be a drive in there somewhere.
Yep. And then the following drive was the drive, Mac Jones's last drive of the game. So a lot of long drives.
3 second half possessions before Bailey.
4 if you include Zappi. That's what it looks like to me.
So Mac got 3 possessions by the time he threw that pick down to the 2-minute
looks
warning.
like to me.
So they had already planned, look, we can't pass protect. I don't think that they went with that mode because Mac sucked. Clearly Mac sucks. I'm not absolving him. But I think the protection was so bad in the first half. They said, we can't pass block. We're not even getting into a situation where we can throw it. Let's run the thing.
Yeah, they ran it well. You know, they were up near 5 yards per carry. And Elliott and Stevenson carries alone, if you just focus in on those two, and there were really not any explosive, aberration types of runs in there. They're up over 4.3 yards per carry. So the offensive line, the discrepancy between the offensive lines playing the run game and the pass game was massive. But Tom, I just wonder if did they really not trust the offensive line from the jump? Because the first drive of the game was all tight end heavy. They had one play with 2 backs that ended up in a screen, but it was all but one snap had multiple tight ends on the field. Multiple snaps had 3 tight ends on the field, and they ran 8 run plays on their first 12 snaps of the game. That smells like the kind of offensive game plan where you're looking to take the ball out of the quarterback's hands.
Mhm.
Did
Or
that
you see
strike
an
you as you're watching it?
I thought that they might have thought that there was an advantage there to running at DeForest Buckner and trying to get against a defense that could be creased a little bit in the run game.
Sure.
But you benefited two ways. You didn't have Mac thrown to unpolished receivers, and you didn't have him back there getting jumpy. But they eventually had to throw. I mean, that's the only way they threw was when they absolutely positively had to. And you can't get to that spot with a quarterback in the NFL, regardless of why. And if the quarterback that you've gotten to that spot with can't move around, can't whip it, can't shrug off some pressure and will go down easily, which he does. Not that he's not physically soft. I don't think personally, but go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, I'm right there with you. And I would have finished one of your sentences there by saying, if you get to that place with your quarterback, how do you have nobody up behind him ready to go? And it almost goes beyond just the player acquisition, the talent acquisition part of it. Would you not have been trying Will Grier a little bit more often? I guess because you're getting ready for a game and the starter has to get all the game planning reps, it's a time crunch. You just don't have the time to, as bad as this guy has been, we got to keep giving him snaps, because if we don't, he gets worse. And there aren't enough snaps to go around to get the second guy ready. And so that, to me, I guess, is the answer to the question that I'm posing. But maybe this bye week, Tom, allows them the freedom to say, hey, we can finally get somebody else ready now. Yay.
And that,
you know,
that goes globally to the lack of urgency that we've mentioned so many times. We mentioned it in free agency when they were idle. We mentioned it when they went through the draft and didn't take any tackles. And there were people, you know, who were Patriots partisans who said, well, what do you mean urgency? You know, it's March, it's April. Well, at the tackle position, they brought in Riley Reif and Calvin Anderson. Neither one has been relevant at all this year. Neither one contributed one iota. At the end of August, when that was clear, that was trending that way, they brought in Tyrone Wheatley and Vidarian Lowe. Neither of them can really play. They brought Connor McDermott back after having released him with an injury, but they bring him back. But they never addressed that. The running back position. On the final play where Mac threw the pick, because Ramondre Stevenson was hurt and Ezekiel Elliott, two bell cow type backs, Ezekiel Elliott tapped out after having run several times. They brought Ty Montgomery in for what probably was his first snap in the backfield of the entire game, because they didn't address the running back position. Ezekiel Elliott coming in mid-August, because that was a position where they swung and missed on Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris and whoever that guy was, James Robinson, I think.
right.
The guys couldn't play. So there was no urgency there. No urgency at the receiver position to make it better. The urgency not shown on offense trends back to Josh McDaniels leaving, no urgency to keep him here. And if you're not going to keep him, fine, but show urgency to find a new lifeblood into the offense so that Mac doesn't stagnate. But they didn't bother with that. And as a result, the urgency's lacking, and you have a team that went through a rebuild, that tried to resist going in the tank during Brady, tried to extend the window as long as they could. When it came clear that the window couldn't be extended with Brady, they said 2020 is a reset, and we'll splurge like mother scratchers in 2021, and we'll get a quarterback, whoever's there. All right, we'll take him. I really think that was the mood. Yeah, he's working out actually pretty good. But they didn't show urgency, and they didn't fully reboot, which I can't blame them. They didn't think they'd have to. They didn't think they'd turn into a lower tier or abysmal team, but now they have, because they never fully reset. So now in 2024, it's again the first year of a rebuild. 2 rebuilds in 4 seasons. Phil, your turn.
Well, and the offseason could look very similar to the one that we saw in 2021, where you end up drafting a quarterback in the first round. Before that, signing a bunch of new players that you've never had experience with before, but they're free agents and you think they're pretty good, and you have a ton of money to spend. So we got to spend it somewhere. We got to field a team. We have to try to get competitive, and maybe that leads to real results in the immediate. But the most important question of it all is who's making those decisions and who is shepherding that new group. the young quarterback, maybe a veteran quarterback, and a bunch of veterans across the board with all that cap space that you have into 2024 and beyond, because it's the development of those pieces that is almost as important, in my opinion, as the acquisition of them. And so, because we don't know what Bill Belichick's going to be doing next year, that shines a light on that decision as obviously being the most important. Coach and general manager, put them 1A and 1B, and then the players filling those holes that we're talking about falling in thereafter.
I would add one other too, coaching staff. Adrian Clem, is he the right person for the job? Is Troy the right person for the wide receivers? Is Mike Pellegrino the right guy for the corners? Is Gerard Mayo the right guy for the head coach job? All on down the line, they have cycled through and experienced so much brain drain, and Bill's net that he has cast for coaches has been extremely small, whether it's Cam McCord or Joe Judge or Matt Patricia or Mike Pellegrino, who was playing Boston Cannons lacrosse just a few years ago. And again, they've had good corners. We've seen guys develop and play well. But the wide net that you would hope would be cast, or the infusion of new ideas that the assistant coaches bring, I don't know if that's gone on, because we don't see player development within the team too. And that, I think, might not augur well for a continuation of the Bill Belichick system tree DNA for the team going to next year. Because right now, Phil, I've covered this team since 1997. It was post Parcells when I took over for 3 years of Pete Carroll. They went 10-6, 9-7, 8-8. He was fired. Bill was brought in 2000 along with Scott Pioli. The team was bad, but it was also in cap jail, and it hadn't drafted well. But they had players. They had Bledsoe. They had representative offensive linemen. They had Troy Brown, Kevin Falk, Damian Woody, Ty Law, Lawyer Malloy, Teddy Bruschi, Ted Johnson. They had guys like Henry Thomas. I don't know if he was still there in 2000, but I think Armstrong might have been there in 2000, Bruce Armstrong. So you had a left tackle.
Willie McGinnis.
Yeah, Christ.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, it was talent. This Patriots team, when Bill Belichick goes, is devoid of talent. So Bill is going to quite likely leave a team in 2023. And shit, forget it. We all know after 23 seasons of Bill, it was higher than the highs that we could imagine, but he's not going to leave it better than he found it in 2000, ironically enough, except for the fact that there's cap space and a high draft pick. There was no cap space in 2000.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/NSBO and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Massachusetts, hope is here. First online real money wager only, $5 pregame moneyline wager required. First online real money wager only, $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com, gamblinghelplinema.org, or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234.
Well, that just gets me thinking about the owner, Tom, and we saw that one image of Robert Kraft hanging his head after that near pick in the end zone where Mac Jones targeted Hunter Henry in the second half there. How much does this one hurt for him? Does he see it the same way we do? Does he view this one as a new low? Because we know he cares as much as he does about the international branding of the game and of his team. And to have it look like that, you know, I think the look matters. I think the product matters. If you're a German fan and you're dying to see a football game, and I know they just had the Chiefs and Dolphins, but man, you're dying to see the New England Patriots, the dynastic Bill Belichick led New England Patriots, and you go to a football game today and you see one touchdown, and it's not the Patriots, and it's a mess. You know, it's a couple of picks late, some weird special teams play, nothing in the passing game. That's about as bad a product as we've seen. I guess this side of the Cowboys game.
And what would Robert and Jonathan Kraft have self-images of themselves that are, what would their self-image be? We fix things. We build things. We fix things. We make them excellent. We're good at that. That's our strength. And that's what our life has been about. So they are the opposite of living in excellence right now. And as people who fix things and make things great, and probably, I'm sure, believe themselves to be people capable of hard decisions, they're going to probably make some very hard decisions, which may, I think, incorporate not just coach and quarterback, but maybe the entire system. It has to be on the table now, Phil. Given where they are, it has to be on the table.
I think you're right. Here's what's interesting about where they're at right now. You just made big decisions last offseason to try to get things fixed. So less than a year ago, and you make it very public. You're negotiating with an extension with Gerard Mayo, and he is opted not to take a head coaching interview so that he can stay in New England. You make it clear you want him around. You make it clear you want a new offensive coordinator, and everybody knows how much you respect Bill O'Brien. He ends up coming here. Would 1 year later, or maybe even slightly less than a year later, would you be willing to move off of those decisions, knowing how you felt about them at the time, because you just feel the entire organization needs to be flushed? Or do you say goodbye to the guy who's in charge of it all right now and say, hey, we got you guys last offseason for a reason. We're keeping you around. This is going to represent some sort of stability for us. And as long as we get a couple of pieces, and they're big pieces, but the head coach and the general manager tweaked, we're going to be much better off. Do you think they would move off of Jonathan and Robert, would move off of those two big decisions that they made less than a year ago?
It did seem like, in hindsight, we talked about this week, and it's kind of been sitting there right in front of us, Phil, that the January move to extend Gerard Mayo or give him a new contract and bring in Bill O'Brien could very much represent, we're not going to replace Bill with one guy, but we have an offensive mind who we trust and enjoy, and we have a defensive coach. I don't think Bill O'Brien's a bad coach. I think that the roster is bad, and then all things have flowed from that. And then let them select the staff. Now, Bill O'Brien probably has more contacts around the league and different coaches, and those would be painful decisions. I mean, if Bill Belichick is fired, does he go someplace else? And does Steve Belichick, who I think is a good coach, and Brian Belichick, do they go with him? I mean, the defensive product is pretty good for a team that's battered with injuries. Remember, Indianapolis has scored more than 25 points in virtually every game. The Patriots held them to 10 today. So on Sunday. So maybe that's the most likely outcome, as opposed to a full new broom sweeps clean, because I'm sure that both Gerard and Bill O'Brien can look at it and say, Robert, that our opinion is listened to, but we're not the ones who made the decisions to bring these folks in. As collaborative as Bill has made it seem to be, at least in 2021, I don't think it's been a true collaboration. And, Matt Groh is not what I would call an independent thinker. He grew up at the knee of Bill Belichick and his dad, Al Groh. He's going to do what Bill wants, as did Nick Caserio, as did everybody. What would Matt Groh do with his own latitude? Would he think like Bill and decide like Bill? Or would he be a different personnel person? Same thing with Elliott Wolf. Same thing with the other personnel guy who I'm forgetting, Phil, right now.
Well, there's a bunch in there that have a lot of experience. There's Pat Stewart, who returned to the team this year. Steve Cargile leads the pro personnel department. Cam Williams leads the college personnel department. So
these guys work, right? I mean, that's the thing, is they're not hard workers. That's the thing. It's not a friggin' country club. It sucks in there.
And they're smart guys. And so, it'd be interesting where Kraft would go with it too, because if you end up keeping those two coaches, I think any owner worth his salt would acknowledge it. You got to have some a lot of collaboration between the coach and the GM. It just doesn't work if the coach is coaching one thing and he has zero say on the player acquisition, and the GM's just handing him players that he thinks are good and they don't fit with the scheme, and that could be a disaster. So again, if you go back to this scenario that we've painted here, where you keep Bill O'Brien and you keep Gerard Mayo because you just committed to these guys and you believe in them. Are they basically telling whoever's running personnel next what they want in personnel? And now all of a sudden you have you have almost what you have here, where it's the head coach is directing the personnel to do what the coach wants. There has to be some of that. And I think there are organizations that figure out that marriage, and there is, a different balance in different teams. Like, so for instance, with the Texans, they have a new defensive minded young head coach in D'Amico Ryans. Nick Caserio is the one who controls the roster. He controls the 53, but he knows what D'Amico Ryans wants. In San Francisco, the head coach, Kyle Shanahan, controls the 53. And so that's closer to what the Patriots have here. Which model would Robert Kraft want to follow would be really interesting to find out.
And which model would his head coach want to follow? If it is Gerard Mayo, does he love the players that he's getting on defense? Does he love the style of it? Does he find the offense ridiculously easy to defend? I mean, whoever the head coach is, you have to find out whether or not his general manager or personnel person is going to make decisions that meld and make the team better. And how are they going to import talent? And how much talent is going to want to stay? Hunter Henry has an expiring contract. One of the better players on the team. Is Jelani Tavai up? I hope not, because he's the other guy who's a good player.
It's a good question. I believe he signed an extension recently, so I think he
did. And but you're going to lose some of these free agents who are like, I don't want to stick around there for a rebuild. It's a lot to go through, Phil.
It is. And yes, Jelani Tavai is under contract through 2024. Had another good game against Indy.
But
listen, I think if you're Gerard Mayo, at least you're happy that you're sort of holding up your end, so to speak, to keep your name in the running for this head coaching job moving forward. I mean, look, like, they allowed 20 points last week. They allowed 10 today. Like, in today's game, it's not easy to do. I don't care who, you're seeing at quarterback. Now, we'll see how much more difficult it gets when they see the Chiefs a little bit later this season. But the whole offense versus defense thing, Tom, isn't it sort of interesting how that might play out? It feels like this has been brewing for like almost 2 years, where the defense has been carrying its weight and you haven't gotten that on the other side.
It really goes back almost to 2019, 2020, even 2020, 2019, 2018, 13-3 Super Bowl win. I mean, all they had on offense was James White, Julian Edelman, Tom Brady, and 70% of what Gronk had been. That was it. And Rex Burkhead. Come on. Let's not overstate it. It was a good friggin' team, Tom. But it is funny how it all comes full circle. We're talking now about if they move on from an overlord for all of football to the triangle of authority that was in place when I came in. The triangle of authority that came in after Bill Parcells. It was Bobby Greer, Andy Wazenchuk, and Pete Carroll. It was a triangle of authority. And it collapsed on itself. And then Bill came in. And we all had a great time for a long time.
Sure did.
How do you think the flight home was? Where is? Probably up there right now.
Long. What kind of beverages they serve on that flight, you think?
Steins or something. I don't know. I've only been
very irresponsible for mid-flight. There's a lot of glass there.
I've only been transatlantic once. All right, Phil, we got a lot to get to this week. Oh, it feels like it's 9 o'clock, but it's only 3:54. What?
Go have a day. No, I feel the same way. But we're gonna have a lot of energy for the rest of this week because there's a lot to talk about. Boy, just when you think the team might start to get uninteresting because the results have been what they've been, as saddening as it is to watch, I'm sure for a lot of our listeners, boy, they are not uninteresting. I'll say that.
It'll be interesting, last point, to hear how the national folks, I mean, Rich Eisen is a friend of mine, and he's been on this. I've been on his show. And every time I go on there and tell him how bleak it is, he's still, what? Come on. It's not what the. Now he got a full serving right in the face of the Patriots in 2023. Now he understands. So the national as you said earlier, this was a national and international game standalone on Sunday morning. Everybody digested it. And it didn't taste so good. Some sauerkraut. All right, we're done.